Welcome back to the Youth Revival podcast. And like last week, my name's Nathan Benger, and I'm from Icon Church. I'm youth pastor at Icon Church. And we're on this journey of building youth ministry from scratch. And last week, we looked at the whole subject of vision and having a picture. And hopefully over the past week, you've gone away, you've maybe worked with your leaders, your teams, maybe you're a senior leader, and you've got a passion to have a youth ministry. And so now you're on a journey of who's going to lead that, who's going to see that through. And I want to encourage you, maybe you are on that journey. I want you to take a look. Take a look around your church. Who hangs out with the young people? Who has fun with the young people? Who do the young people seem to get drawn to who maybe is older? And pick those people up. They might be a little bit rough. I was when I got given this incredible opportunity and privilege to lead. They might be a little bit rough around the edges, but here's the thing. Believe in them. Invest in them. Begin to do that because they're natural gatherers of those young people, and young people seem to follow them. But maybe you're on that journey. Maybe you've taken that picture and you've begun to grab a picture. And so today, I want to look at the second part in building youth ministry from scratch. And one of the things that we had to do, and that was to have a plan. To have a plan. I talked a little bit last week about we wanted to do worship and the word and to build relationships, and they were like our three keys that they were non-negotiables. That like this is what we're believing for, but also we wanted to provide an environment where young people could bring their friends. And in those early days, when you've got 8 young people singing and worshiping to an iTunes playlist, and you're just looking at a screen, and that would make the night so much fun and everything, it was a tough environment for them to bring their friends into. And so we decided we need a plan. And so we came up with this plan, and you can steal it, you can have it, you can do it. I want to encourage you to do it, actually. And that was over a month. Maybe you take 4 weeks over the month. For 3 weeks, it would be worship, word, relationship. We would do that. We are like turning the spiritual temperature up in young people's lives. We're getting them passionate about God. We're getting them on fire for God. But over those 3 weeks, we would be also getting them on fire for reaching their friends. So the 4th week, we would provide an environment. We would call it a social. We would call it different names. But we would provide an environment. And for 3 weeks, we would be hot on, you need to bring your friends. We're doing this on the 4th week. You need to bring your friends. And they would know. And we would be talking about being on fire for reaching your friends, being on fire. And then we would put on some incredibly fun nights that we would do on that 4th week for them to bring their friends to. And in those early days of youth ministry, our youth ministry looks a little bit different now, but in those early days of youth ministry, those nights were key to us reaching young people. Here's a few things that we did. I'm going to put a whole load of the things that we did in the show notes, but we would run themed nights like superhero night, where we would all dress up as superheroes, and we'd have a load of fun games, and we would show movie clips, and we would begin to do that. I remember once we ran a night, Will Ferrell night. There are other great movie stars you could follow, but I was a Will Ferrell fan, and some of our young people were. Will Ferrell's movies were coming out, and so we ran Will Ferrell night. We contacted local fast food restaurants and got them to donate food. We bought food in, we had a meal, we played certain games, we showed movie clips, we had a whole load of fun. One of the best nights we did, we called it Golden Bulbs. And like the Golden Globes, but we decided and we said, and it's much easier to do today, but we got a little camcorder and we said to young people, make your own movie. Today they can do it on their iPhone. It's easy to do. But it was to make your own movie, and then we're going to show it on the night, but you're going to bring all your friends. I remember 2 of those being absolutely key. Some of those nights are nights where some of our youth leaders came in for the very first time. We did a food fight. A huge food fight, and we did it on the grounds. We were meeting in a school, as I said last week, and we did it on the grounds in the car park, and we created this incredible mess. It was ridiculous, and we did this food fight in like November. Luckily, the next day it absolutely threw it down with snow, and it meant we didn't have to go and clear the car park, and we were so thankful that our prayers had been answered. But we did, so many nights. We did manhunts, we did water fights. We used the space that we had. We were blessed at that point. The school had lots of grounds that we could use. They had a little wood at the side that we could use. But I want you to think creatively and to begin to have a plan. Begin to have a plan, because this was all part of going towards what we saw. Because we saw thousands of teenagers coming into our youth ministry, hundreds and thousands coming in and being saved and finding Jesus. But we had to provide an environment in those early days where young people felt comfortable in bringing their friends. But here's a key for me. Is on those nights we would plan, and specifically plan how we were going to talk about youth the following week. And we would make a big invite. And we would be talking about that in so much detail, in terms of pushing that throughout the night. I know when we'd done a good social night, because the following week we saw loads of young people come back who'd come for the first week. They come back into our youth ministry, and then that's where we're believing for God to be at work. We're believing they build great relationships, and they do that. But we have to have a plan. That's a plan around our programming, but we also have to have a plan around what does this look like and what does it sound like. And so, I talked about, worshiping and, the word of God and relationships, but I think it goes further than that. It goes into culture. What is this going to look like? What is it going to sound like? They're two great questions that we can ask ourselves. What does this look like? What are we believing for young people to look like? If we're believing for young people to be passionate, then here's the key. If I've got a plan and I'm deciding culturally that young people are going to be passionate, firstly, I have to be passionate. We have a saying in our youth ministry: if we sprint, young people will run. If we run, young people will jog. If we jog, young people will walk. And if we walk, young people will stand still. So here's the key. If we're going to be passionate, we're going to sprint with that passion. We're going to be over the top with that passion, because the young people might run with that and begin to do that. But that's all about having a plan. Having a plan. What music are you going to play before and afterwards? What are you going to do? What worship are you going to do? What's the style? Where are you going to lean? What is it you're going to do? It's culturally, let's have a plan. The amazing thing is that we had a church that supported us and believed in us. And so we had a plan, but also we had a church that believed in what we were doing. Actually, I've said that the wrong way around, because sometimes people do it that way, in that we're expecting the church to follow the youth ministry. No. Youth ministry always exists to build the church. And so the key thing here for me was, what do we as a church begin to look like? And maybe that's a chat with our senior leader. And maybe that's a chat that we need to have, and a thought we need to have even around our services on a Sunday, or us as a church. Are we accessible for young people to be reached in our church? Not just putting a silo of a youth ministry, expecting them to reach, because here's what happens. They've got to transition into church. And so we need to have a plan for that. And maybe that's looking at our style and what we do. But culturally, what does this begin to look like? What does it begin? Because you are the culture. And so I want to encourage you, be intentional, have a plan. Maybe it's grabbing that 4 week, but then also, what does this look like on a night? How does it look? What are our values going to be? What is our culture going to be? What are we going to do on those nights? How are we going to inspire young people to, we had to inspire young people to worship. We had to inspire young people to be in the Word. That started with us being the culture and setting that example. There are many places I've gone, youth ministries I've gone to, and I stand there, and there might be a youth ministry of 20, 30 young people. And I watch the youth leader, and the youth leader just stands at the back and kind of looks over and watches. And I'm thinking, this is the level it's going to stay at. Why? Because you're the culture, you're setting the atmosphere, you're setting the temperature. And that's what happens. As youth leaders, let us be the people that set the temperature and set the atmosphere. Let's not wait, because culture's always there. You can either design it, or it can be by default. I'll get my words out. It can be by default. It can either happen by default, or we can design it. I want to design it because I've got a picture. It's always going back to that picture. But then I've got a plan of here's what this is going to look like. Here's what it's going to sound like. And if my picture is I want to reach a load of young people, I've got to have a plan of how we're going to reach those, how we're going to do that. So I want to encourage you, if you're not listening to the first episode of these podcasts, go back, listen to the first episode. But secondly, I want to encourage you to download the show notes, go through the questions yourself, but also as teams, as people, even as senior leaders. And then any questions that you have, then drop us a message. You can do that through our social media, our Instagram, yth.revival, or you can drop it on this YouTube video if you're watching this on YouTube. But please get in touch, and I look forward to starting part 3 next week with you on building a youth ministry from scratch. We'll see you then.